Hello and welcome back to another episode of Thoughts Per Episode Classic Doctor Who Edition. I apologise for there not being any episode last week. I did have the opportunity to do another Sunday upload, but I decided instead to schedule ahead so that I can start hopefully getting ahead. You will see how successful I am with the coming weeks. But enough about that. Today we're going to be looking at a dinky little two-parter, which is simply titled The Rescue. The Rescue, Part 1, The Powerful Enemy. The Doctor and his companions meet a lonely orphan and a paralysed man. Okay, there's nothing to suggest that she's an orphan, but I guess she's an orphan according to this. But yeah, the episode opens with our human survivors, Vicky and Bennett, who are the only survivors of a spaceship, we learn, that has crash-landed on the planet Dido, which, even though Dido the musician wasn't around yet, I like to think that since this is set in the future, the humans who landed on this planet named it after her. Dido, of course, being the first person to take up the name. There's no Queen of Carthage or anything like that in the history of mankind that this could have possibly been named after. No, I didn't have that information to hand, I googled it. But yeah, from what I can tell from what the plot of the story's told us so far, it would seem that a bunch of these aliens, very pointy looking, spiky insect looking aliens, have come along and killed the rest of the crew, and then there's this one which is apparently keeping our survivors safe from the other aliens, but it is also holding them hostage there and not letting them leave the ship for whatever reason. And that's something I've really come to realise is a theme in Doctor Who, of aliens holding humans hostage. That seems to come up pretty much every episode that has aliens in. It happened with the Daleks, obviously, it happened with the Sensorites, it's happened with these dudes, those weird aliens in the Keys of Marinus. Now, interestingly, the Doctor says that he's been here before, and if I didn't know any better, I would assume that it's a reference to an earlier episode. But no, this is just to be taken as something that he's done in his adventures off screen, unless they had already published books by that point. But I feel like writing off-screen adventures as trade paperback books probably wasn't a practice which was standardized at this point in production. Actually, I do wonder if there were any classic Doctor Who books. What was the earliest one? When did that kind of thing start up? Oh hey, you know what? I just looked it up and it looks like almost every classic Doctor Who story of this era was also novelized by the people who wrote the original screenplays, or in some cases, but in other cases by other people. Like, for instance, this very one, there's a novel called The Rescue, which is literally just this. That's crazy. These books would be like 100 pages long in some instances too. I wonder if they ever added any extra detail that wasn't in the episodes that the original screenwriters wanted to include. Sorry, I'm going deep down this rabbit hole live in the middle of an episode breakdown because these books are actually available on Kindle. And now part of me is thinking that they would be a good alternative to the adventures that aren't actually available because they've lost the frickin' original tapes or whatever. But they're also like 100 pages long, or 200 pages long in case of Doctor Who and the Daleks, so that would probably take too long to do. But that is fascinating. I've literally never heard of these novelizations. That's great. I'm really glad these exist. I mean, listen to this quote from the Daleks. The voice was all on one level, without any expression at all. A dull monotone that still managed to convey a terrible sense of evil. This is good shit. Maybe I'll create a side series called Thoughts Per Novelization. No, I definitely won't. I don't have time to do this, let alone that. Anyway, to answer my question, it would appear that as far as original novels goes, the earliest would have been 1991, where between 1991 and 1999, they continued the story of a Doctor from the point the TV program ended, and there were 83 books published in that series, which is awesome and insane. And it comes to me that obviously this would have been the way people enjoyed Doctor Who in the dark years between series. So yeah, okay. Enough about the Doctor Who books. Let's get back to the episode, shall we? So yeah, this episode is not based on any previous Doctor Who adventure, but William Hartnell, the Doctor, does state that he's been here before, so that's probably going to come up later. He talks about how peaceful these people are and how there were only like 100 in the entire race, so they were just like a tight-knit community of people. My theory is they've landed in a version of the world hundreds and hundreds of years in the future where there's many, many more of them, and this entire story is going to be based on the fact that the bigger a community gets, the more violence and strife can be caused by, bad governmental practices and stuff like that. The harder it is to manage a society of a larger size, that kind of thing. The only one of these dudes we've met so far is called Kikillian or something like that. and I haven't picked up on the name of any particular race of theirs yet. Now, taking it back a little bit to the start of the episode, it's shown that the Doctor was sleeping through the TARDIS landing, which was interesting, and while obviously he's never going to speak openly about his feelings because he is, of course, an old man in the 1960s, it's also kind of a quick way of showing us that, yeah, he's probably a little bit sad that Susan's left, or at least that he's left Susan. Susan didn't really get much of a say in the matter, and I'm really glad that they decided to address the whole Susan leaving thing, because I was kind of worried that they were just going to scooch it to the side. Although, to be fair, that's a little unfair of me to worry that they were going to do that, because this show so far has made a damn good show of having a sequential order to the episodes and having one episode or one serial lead on from another, if you know what I mean. Now, it's interesting in the prologue of the episode when Vicky mentions that the ship she picked up on landed silently, because we know the TARDIS doesn't land silently. The TARDIS lands by going... Okay, I can't do it. So I'm wondering, because I know we've got the takeoff noise, is that just something that they changed later on without really realising it had been referenced before? This is one of those things that doesn't really matter, but I like to pick apart. But yeah, back to the Susan thing. I like how the Doctor's literally in the middle of giving everyone instructions, and he's like, Ian, go and do this, Barbara, go and do this, Susan, and you know what's interesting? He does that later on in his later incarnations as well. I can't think of an offhand example, but I've definitely seen the Doctor do that, where he's talking to himself or something, and he's gone to talk to a companion who's just died or left him or something, and then he stops realising what he's doing. I really like the framing of this episode, where just in the background, you know the Doctor's in kind of a weird place right now because he's not with his granddaughter anymore. Now, that alien, when Ian and Barbara go out to explore, tells them they can trust him and then immediately pushes Barbara off a ledge, which is rude. Also, I have no idea how Barbara survived it, because it sounded like quite a long fall, and all that's really explained is that Vicky found her and took her in and fixed her up, I guess. Don't know why I said fixed her up, that makes Barbara sound like a vehicle. Barbara is not a vehicle, she's an S-tier character. In the meantime, the Doctor and Ian go off down the other way in the cave to try and find another way down to where Barbara fell, and instead Ian manages to stumble into a trap, which is, cliffhanger alert, sending him to his doom with a ravenous looking creature below, which, you know, it looks very proppy, but it's not the worst monster I've ever seen on this show. The Rescue, Part 2, Desperate Measures. The Doctor realises that Bennett has not been honest with him, or with Vicky. I'm glad I didn't look at the thumbnail for this one, because it kind of half gives away the twist, but we'll get to the twist in a minute. But no, I was not expecting it. Of course, the last episode left off with Ian being slowly pushed towards a pit by deadly knives, which was so sharp that Ian was able to just lean his entire body weight on one of them with his whole hand before remembering they're supposed to be sharp and recoiling and going, Doctor, they're razor sharp! If you're wondering how he got out of that little predicament, by the way, if you don't remember this episode from 1964, he uses the Doctor's coat to wrap it around one of the blades and swing himself around. Thought he was a goner that time. In an interesting development, Barbara finds a gun, goes outside, sees Vicky apparently about to be eaten by a monster, shoots the monster in the face, kills the monster, and then Vicky hates her because that monster was Vicky's pet. He was called Sandy. I don't really know what that was meant to add to the episode, but you know, it's there. Later on, when the Doctor's trying to comfort Vicky about it, the Doctor says that he probably would have done the same thing, and Vicky says that no, he wouldn't. You haven't got that sort of face that kills things. Vicky mentions that she hails from the year 2493, which I think is nice because it confirms that it didn't take humanity that long to bounce back from the Dalek invasion of Earth, and they were able to start sending people out on rockets to other planets and stuff, you know? There's a really fun little conversation between her, Barbara, and Ian about the fact that they're time travelers and where they come from 1963, which of course lands as it like being such a long time ago now that I'm watching it in 2022, but back then would be like, yeah, 1963, that was like last year. She immediately comes out with, so you're 550 years old? Which, you know, this entire conversation was charming, but I didn't quite understand what the point of it was once again. But of course, by the end of the episode, I did, because as it turns out, Vicky is our first brand new companion. I'm assuming she lasts more than like one more serial, but she's joining them on their romp around the universe, which I think is pretty neat. I didn't actually expect it. I guess I'll talk about it now. I didn't actually expect them to replace Susan. I thought they were just gonna go with a change up in dynamic, with just having the Doctor, Barbara, and Ian, and I was almost looking forward to that in a way, but I guess I should have taken a hint from the previous episode's trivia, where that girl that that girl that Barbara was with for a while, was apparently being lined up to be Susan's replacement, but they didn't go for it in the end. Now, as for the twist of the episode, turns out Bennett was also Quikillian, the alien, and the little scorpion-looking, insecty-looking alien. And I actually was taken by surprise. I think that was a pretty good mystery, and I could tell it was a good mystery because while I had no suspicions at the start of the episode, as we were leading into the reveal, I started to suspect some things. I forget exactly what it was that tipped me off, but I suddenly put a note down that was like, is Bennett also Quikillian? I don't think I've ever seen him on screen at the same time as Quikillian, and also the Doctor never saw him, and the Doctor is familiar with the aliens on Dido, like the clues were laid early. I think it was a trapdoor actually outside of a spaceship that did it for me, although that does make you wonder, why does a spaceship have a trapdoor out the bottom of it? Surely that would be a little bit dangerous unless he made it himself, but it looks like it was hardwired into the spaceship. But yeah, the plot here is that Bennett killed all the Didoians, or whatever you want to call them, apart from two who found him, and then walked very slowly and menacingly towards him, saving the Doctor's life. And it's kind of a silly scene because Bennett just kind of like throws a chair, but not at them. He just kind of like tips it over, continues backing away, backs out of the door, and then falls to his death down the chasm that was behind the door. I also realised there was a red flag earlier on when Vicky was talking about how Bennett kept saying that when he got back to Earth, he was going to get people to wipe out the planet Dido. But yeah, it turned out he was like an outlaw or something, and he was coming here to hide from space cops or something. I don't know, I didn't quite pick up all of it, but that was Bennett. And that was the plot of this episode. As far as Vicky joining the crew goes, I think it will be interesting to see, not just how the dynamic changes with her on board, but the fact that she's from 2493. Like, are we going to get any more passing comments about her time to get some more lore from what the world is like in 2493? I know there have been other companions in Classic Who which have come from futuristic eras, or I think there's also been a few from the past as well. But in Modern Who, I don't think we've ever had a companion who hasn't just been contemporary time alongside us watching the show. In terms of character, Vicky seems to be pretty similar to Susan, although granted we haven't seen much of her so far. Hopefully she comes across a little bit less melodramatic than Susan, in terms of like the screaming and the constantly crying. I didn't hate Susan, by the way, but that's just one part of her character that I didn't particularly love, so hopefully she's a little bit less like that. But she genuinely seemed thrilled to be joining the TARDIS crew. Like, as an actor, you could kind of see it in her face. But it also kind of feels a little bit weird, just the idea of, like, them adopting another young person. I get that she had nothing left to really live for, how all her family was dead, she had no way back to Earth and all of this, but, like, it just felt like they just kind of adopted her. The scene when the Doctor goes back in the TARDIS and Ian and Barbara are like, we've been talking and yes, we want to have her travel with us. It's like they were signing adoption papers or something. I guess in a way they kind of are, right? I don't know. But yeah, this is exciting. I kind of had a general idea of the Doctor and his companions when I started the show, because as I mentioned way back then, I actually spent some time reading like synopses of the earliest Doctor Who episodes, but I clearly never got this far because the Vicky thing took me completely by surprise, and I have no idea how long she's going to be with us. I have no idea if she outlasts Ian and Barbara, or if they all leave at the same time, or how Vicky leaves, or how long she stays with us for. Maybe she's with us into the Patrick Troughton era. I have no idea what to expect, and if you do know, please don't let me know, because I would like to discover this for myself. It was a lovely surprise. Okay, trivia time. Here's a great one. The producers wanted Maureen O'Brien, who plays Vicky, to dye her hair black to resemble Susan more. Maureen refused and instead suggested the alternative of getting Carol Ann Ford back. Fucking love it. But that also does not bode well for the idea of her being her own character instead of just a Susan replacement. I'll tell you what, I don't read every single bit of trivia that's on IMDb for Doctor Who, because some of them, 9 out of 9 found this interesting. Ian Chesterton is seen wearing a wide tie with a triangle bottom. This marks the first time he doesn't wear his trademark skinny tie with a square bottom. Wow. How fucking fascinating. In more interesting news though, apparently Carol Ann Ford did visit the set to offer encouragement to her successor. Also, this is Maureen O'Brien's first television acting debut in general. I guess first and debut, that's kind of a double positive, but you know what I mean. Apparently the actor for Killian was credited differently to the actor for Bennett, just so that a mystery could remain for people who actually paid attention to the credits. He was credited as Sidney Wilson, in order to preserve the whodunit, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of trivia for this episode. Originally, Vicky had the more futuristic sounding name Tanny, which I actually quite like. It's a shame they didn't go for it. Before settling on Vicky, the production team thought of several other possible names, including Valerie, Millie, and Lukey. Lucky, I don't know. Earlier drafts of the rescue board a working title, Doctor Who and Tanny. Yeah, Vicky's a fine name. I like how they tried to make it sound more futuristic by being like, oh, it's not short for Victoria, it's just Vicky with an I. Ah yes, here's one I actually noticed. This was the first time the TARDIS is mentioned as materializing places, not landing places. Apparently in the first draft of this story, at the beginning of the episode, there was a scene where Ian confided in Barbara that he was afraid of a time when the Doctor would close the TARDIS on them and leave them like he did with Susan. But the Doctor overheard and replied that there would be a warning if they were to part, so that's nice. Okay, someone in the comments mentioned this to me before, but I forgot about it until I read this piece of trivia. This is the first in a 52-week production block, meaning this is basically the first episode of Season 2. The last two serials were just held for 6 weeks before being shown as the start of this season. But when you consider the idea that the last bunch of filming happened ending with Susan's last episode and the Dalek invasion of Earth, it feels more like the kind of grand finale companion leaving thing that we're used to in modern Doctor Who, so it's actually not surprising to learn that, and then this being the first kind of serial of a second season with Vicky joining. Oh no, apparently in the scene where Barbara shoots the alien thing, Sandy, Jacqueline Hill, who plays her, was injured, and I did think when I watched it, it looked like a pretty dangerous device to be shooting. Apparently she got like a shock and a sore face. That's all that's written here. That's unfortunate. Oh, and those alien creatures are called sand beasts. That's why she's called Sandy, or he, or whatever the gender of that sand beast was. Anyway, it's nice to have a bit of an extended trivia segment because this was only a two-parter, so this is, of course, a slightly shorter episode. So that's just about going to do it for this episode, so thank you for watching. Come back next week for more, and remember to like the video if you liked it, and be free. Just be free. Feel free to leave a comment if you got anything to say. Speaking of not being able to talk, here's some bloopers. Bloop. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Classic Doctor Who edition. Fuck. Okay, starting off strong. Bloop. Plenty of other fucking... You know what, Christian? Instead of saying there's plenty of other examples, why don't you go and scroll through the episodes and find some examples, huh? Bloop. Leading to his doom. Bloop. I'm glad I didn't look... Did I say glad or did I say... Bloop. Tell you what, I don't read out every trivia segment on Doctor Who. Shit. I messed up and then I saved it and then I just messed it up again. Bloop.